Welcome to a series called The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times. And if you've been watching every episode and you've been reading verse by verse along with us, you know that we only use the Bible as a cross-reference. And there's a particular warning we're about to get into as we see more of a detail of the destruction of Babylon. And we see this in the Bible. So we're going to take a little moment. We're just going to pick it up where we left off, which is we've spent a lot of time talking about the harlot and the beast and Babylon. And now we're getting into a declaration from an angel regarding the destruction of Babylon. So we're just going to pick it up where we left off, Revelation 18, starting verse 1. After these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become a habitation of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, unless you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. So we spent a little bit of time talking about the demonic possession of the people of Babylon. And there's a warning here to come out of her, my people. Right after there's a declaration of what it is Babylon did. And of course, we've spent a lot of time going over what it is Babylon did. We're just going to touch on it here because we've seen this in the past. We've seen this in other places in the Bible. So we're going to touch on it real quick and then we're going to go there. So once again, for the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And we spent many episodes talking about what that looks like. The kings of the earth had committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth had become rich through the abundance of her luxury. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, lest you receive of her plagues. Now, there was a very similar warning in Jeremiah. Of course, Jeremiah was right before the Babylonians conquered Israel, so there was a lot of declarations about Babylon. Now, the problem with comparing Jeremiah to end-time scriptures, a lot of people say, well, Jeremiah was talking about, that first siege of Jerusalem. And I think it's very important we not just say this is not a dual prophetic thing, because this is very much a dual prophetic thing. And we'll see why here shortly. At the very end of Jeremiah, as he's talking about the destruction of Babylon, there's some things that he says that are very peculiar that lead many to believe that this is very much dual prophetic, that there's some things he says, especially at the end of Jeremiah, that actually have more to do with the end times than they do the first destruction of Babylon. So I'm just going to pick it up in Jeremiah 51, starting verse 6. Flee from the midst of Babylon, and everyone save his life. Do not be cut off in her iniquities, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He shall recompense her. Babylon was a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunk. The nations drank her wine. Therefore the nations are deranged. Babylon has suddenly fallen and been destroyed. Wail for her. So as we look at the destruction of Babylon, it's very important. Jeremiah gives a lot of detail into this. Now, I just want to take a moment before we get into what it is Jeremiah had to say about this. I just kind of want to show you that we can see that this is dual prophetic, and here's why. If we look at Jeremiah 51:1, when he first starts this conversation about the destruction of Babylon, says, Thus says the Lord, Behold, I will raise up against Babylon, against those who dwell in Leb-Kamai, a destroying wind. I will send winnowers to Babylon, who shall winnow her and empty her land, for in the day of doom they shall be against her all around. In 51:1, where it says Leb-Kamai, that Leb-Kamai what many people believe is that it's the heart, the will, the intellect, or the center of a thing. So it's the heart of, it's the will of that thing. So what he's saying is, to the heart of Babylon, to the heart of the harlot, to those who are part of the intellect of the harlot, the will of that harlot, to those people, against those who dwell in Leb Kamai, he's going to send a destroying wind. Now, that word wind, we're going to break that one down too, because what that is it's the word ruah, which could be wind, it could be breath, but it also could be spirit. For example, Genesis 1:2, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the spirit, or the weruah of God, was hovering over the face of the waters. So it could be spirits, and I think it's most likely a spirit. So he's not going to send a destroying wind. He's sending a destroying spirit, is what he's saying, and that's why I'm not a big fan of that word wind. And I will send winnowers to Babylon, which winnowers, this word winnower, is zarim. It's to turn aside. I'm sending those who will turn the people aside, cause them to be strange, profane, or to commit adultery. So that's why, we have to look at this is dual prophetic. Because he's saying, behold, I will raise up against Babylon those who dwell in the heart, in the center, who are of the intellect of Babylon, a destroying spirit who will cause them to turn aside, to be strange, profane, or commit adultery, and empty her land. For in the day of doom there shall be against her all around. Now, again, I share this. This is very much dual prophetic. This is at the end of Jeremiah. There's been lots of declarations. And by the way, Nebuchadnezzar was even, one, he was dead by the time there was a destruction of Babylon. And two, as what we're looking at, this is an attack on Israel, and it's in response to an attack on Israel, and of course, the beast will attack Israel. So, with that being said, I think we need to approach Jeremiah. It's the only place where it says, hey, get out of Babylon, because the nations have become drunk on the wine of her fornication. I'm about to destroy it. I think it's important we pay attention, because when God says, I'm about to destroy this thing, my people come out of her, I think it's important we say, okay, well, what does this mean? And the only place we see it is Jeremiah 51. So let's just keep digging through. Again, let's pick it up where I left off, starting over in 51:6. Flee from the midst of Babylon, and everyone save his life. Do not be cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. And what he's saying is, don't get cut off in her iniquity. And he says the exact same thing in Revelation. Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. So let's just keep going. For this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He shall recompense her. Babylon was a golden cup in the Lord's hand, just like Revelation, that made all the earth drunk. The nations drank her wine, just like Revelation. Therefore, the nations are deranged. Babylon has suddenly fallen and been destroyed. Wail for her. Take balm for her pain. Perhaps she might be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one to his own country, for her judgment reaches to heaven and is lifted up to the skies. The Lord has revealed our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our God. So what he's saying is there's some work to be done. When this is happening, there's definitely, when you see these sins, and we've seen the sins of this nation, the world has become drunk. The kings of the earth have become drunk off of the fornication of this country. The kings of the earth have become drunk off of our pornea. They've become drunk off of our sex industry. The earth and the merchants of the earth have become rich off of our luxuries. You know, but there's some work to be done. And it's, I think it's so interesting that he says, you know, here, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her iniquities, for her iniquities have reached up to heaven. Well, what does that come out? Well, now there's some work to be done. Well, what kind of work? Well, now we've seen in the past the two witnesses. There's the 144,000 Israelites and a multitude of Gentiles that all make up the remnant who will be warring with the Antichrist. So we can look at, well, what takes place with the Jews. We could follow their lead a little bit. 51:17, everyone is dull-hearted without knowledge. Every metalsmith is put to shame by the carved image. For his molded image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. They are futile, a work of errors. In the time of their punishment, they shall perish. So they're saying there's no technology that can save them. The portion of Jacob is not like them. Okay, now we're talking about the remnant. For he is the maker of all things, and Israel is the tribe of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name. You are my battle axe and weapon of war, for with you I will break the nations in pieces. For with you I will destroy kingdoms. With you I will break in pieces the horses and its riders. With you I will break in pieces the chariots and its rider. With you I will break in pieces men and women. With you I will break in pieces old and young. With you I will break in pieces the young men and the maiden. With you I will break in pieces the shepherd and his flock. With you I will break in pieces the farmer and his yoke and oxen. With you I will break in pieces the governors and rulers. And I will repay Babylon and all the inhabitants of Chaldea for the evil they have done in Zion in your sight, says the Lord. Behold, I am against you, O destroying mountain, who destroys all the earth, says the Lord. And I will stretch out my hand against you, roll you down from the rocks, and make you a burnt mountain. They shall not take from you a stone for a corner, or a stone for a foundation, but you shall be desolate forever, says the Lord. And in the end, that's really what it's about. There's some work to be done. There's some work to be done, and it is against the beast and its system and the Antichrist. And what God is saying is that, of course, you're going to prevail against these things. You know, you're going to be a battle axe in my hand, is what he's saying. So when it says, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, lest you receive of her plagues, I believe there's two warnings here. One, don't fall for it. Most Christians are engaging in the sins of Babylon. Most Christians in America are engaging in the sins of Babylon. You know, go back and watch the episodes on the harlot, and I guarantee there's things in there that you're saying, you know, yes, I indulged in a lot of gluttonous spending. Yes, I engaged in fornication. Yes, I engaged in adultery. Yes, I engaged in pornography. You know, most Christians can say, yes, they engaged in these things and have become a part of Babylon. And what this is saying is, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, unless you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. So while everybody else, like in Jeremiah, they're just enjoying their luxuries, there's some that are preparing for this moment in time, a very important moment. So, you know, we're going to kind of stick around that same idea. We're going to look at, well, what does this mean? Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins. And what is it we're supposed to do? By looking at Jeremiah 51. So, hope this video helped. We'll definitely spend another day on this. Any thoughts or comments, put that below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support this channel at the Patreon, that link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.